Hello everybody and welcome to the third and final part of our Sell, Loan, Keep series here on Talking Wolves. Thank you for your support on the first two videos. We're here now to look at the forwards. We've got quite a chunk of players that we're going to be reviewing. I'm delighted to be alongside Joe and Jord once again, lads. Thanks for jumping on. Let's jump straight into it. Jorgen, Strand, Larsson. Joe, in terms of a debut season, it can't get much better than that. Very, very good campaign for Jorgen. Had a little bit of a dry spell mid-season, but second half of the season really kicked on and he's gone on to have a really successful campaign, I'd say.
Yeah, he has. He's been a breath of fresh air. Really, I think he offers a lot more than we would have expected. Even as someone who'd watched him a little bit, I did have a view that he might be a bit more of a kind of just out and out target man, and I think people who watch him probably be forgiven for thinking that. But there's a lot more to what he does. I think the midway through the season, he hit a bit of a kind of slow patch, but I think Menezes maybe gave him a bit of a turbo then to kind of support him and give him get men around him, which I think has really helped. It kind of pulls defenders away from him. As a finisher, I think he's as good as I've seen. I think from a centre forward in kind of this Premier League era 100%. There's some great finishes in that kind of 14, 15 Premier League goals he's got. So he's a stone wall. Obviously, his move's going to be turning permanent this summer. So I assume it's fairly a given that he's going to be a keep.
Yeah, definitely. Jord, I think he's obviously going to be a keep. Probably need to add a little bit more competition for him, I think, next season. And that's not, nothing taken away from his ability and quality, because I think he's definitely a forward that can push us up the league table if he's got the right players around him as well. But like Joe said, a really, really successful first campaign for him. Brand new league, 14 goals is a really nice return.
Yeah, he's had an unbelievable season, and I think for a first season in the Premier League, for a player to come from outside the league to go and do that is no mean feat, especially for 60% of the season we were pretty poor, let's be honest with you. And I think actually even during sort of our poor start to the season, he was still getting goal returns. It was just that we couldn't keep him out the other end, which was part of the problem of our demise. I think he's been brilliant. I think the problem you're going to get with competition for Jorgen Strand Larsson is to get someone of his level of ability. I think you're paying way more than €25 million.
Yeah.
And secondly, as well, then you've got to contend with one of them being happy to be on the bench, because I don't think we'll play two like similar profile players as Jorgen Strand Larsson. So I think we definitely do need better competition. We need an option similar to Jorgen Strand Larsson, but I'm not sure you'll get that in the market without spending a lot of money. And I think there'll be a striker within this series that we're talking about who may be grateful just to be in and around a football squad. Moving forward, that could be an option to be able to be a bit of a foil for Strand Larsson as and when we need him next season.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe a number 10 or one of those players that can play the inside 10 that can also play a striker role. Vitor Pereira didn't seem to like Matheus Cunha, who we'll come on to now. Obviously, Strand Larsson's a keep. Cunha, Jord, we know he's going. By the time this video is out, he's moved to Manchester United, maybe officially confirmed. So I think we'll probably mark him as a sell now anyway. But for his controversies off the pitch, on the pitch, he's been nothing short of remarkable for Wolves. At times really dragged us through, Jordan. In terms of quality, I think footballing ability-wise, he's up there with one of the best players Wolves have had in the modern era.
Yeah, I think footballing ability, but quite possibly the most talented footballer we've had. Definitely in those sort of four positions with what he can do on the ball. I do think he's sort of ruined his legacy a little bit at Wolves with the off the field stuff and some of the petulance on the field as well, especially for some like myself. I think, I even think like he might go down as a cult hero in years to come. But I think he's sort of tarnished his legacy a little bit with, I don't think I won't call him a legend. I don't think many fans would.
No.
And I think actually as he moved to Man United, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, I think my personal opinion on this Man United move, which has been articulated on the podcasts of people that have been listening to, I think Man United's a massive fire. And I think putting someone like Matheus Cunha in there, I think is just pure petrol. and I think it's just gonna go up even more.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of Man United mates at work and whatever. I had a conversation yesterday about it, and there was surprised my reaction. I was like, I'm happy to sell him. I think we're getting good money. I think we're a better side without him in the side as a team collective. And if you think he's going to come out and solve all your problems, I think he's going to add more to it. So, yeah, look, I mean, it's a sell. It's a shame, sort of, for me how it sort of ended. An unbelievable football on his day, but I think he's just sort of tarnished his legacy with Wolves, to be fair, with some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Joe, quickly, I think when you're in a club in Wolves' position, especially in the positions that we have been in this season, yes, you want the players with that talent, but in terms of the attitude, it can sort of hold the club back a little bit, I suppose. I don't know how he'll get on at Manchester United. I really can't see or forecast how he's going to do there, to be honest. But I'm sure we can echo a lot of what George said there.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think there's potential for what George mentions there to happen. There's a part of me that thinks possibly when he goes in there, because the one thing about Matheus Cunha that I don't think anyone can question is he does improve teammates around him by demanding more from them, just that basically pure on an arrogance, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think players like Ryan Nouri this season have improved because of that. They can maybe express themselves. I think players like Andre and Joe Gomez will be 100% every week, regardless of who's in the team. But I think when he goes to Man United, I definitely think the more likely situation is what George mentions. But I think there's a 20% chance maybe that he goes in there and certain players, I think players like Højlund and the players that have kind of been barracked at United aren't going to improve dramatically. But I think there are players in that team that might benefit from almost Bruno Fernandes and Matheus Cunha being in that team and demanding more from them. Now, we've all played football to a level, kind of a lowish level, but even when you play football, there's people that can go one way or the other. Players can bring you on, or you can just think, fuck, mate, this bloke's not for me. And I think there's a potential, as George says, for that to happen. But I think from a technical perspective, he was incredible this season, last season, whatever we say. There's no getting away from the fact that he's kind of dampened that slightly, I think. But I'll remember this season for maybe a lot of what he's done for us and kind of the brilliance on the ball and all that kind of stuff. But he goes into that kind of cult hero bracket for me, rather than the Neveses, even the Joe Gomez's of kind of, you see people play football in the right way. For 70 minutes each week, he's strolling around looking angry. So, he's been brilliant technically, but we've said this to death before, but I do think we'll be a better team without him if we spend the money correctly, which I think we will, if I'm honest. I do fancy us to go for a good window. But I think the team will be better off for losing him, because we'll just be a greater team without him. We've lost a great individual, but we'll become a better team.
We saw even the period when he was suspended more recently, when we started our nice winning run, how well we could play and how well we could grind out results. And yes, they were probably against teams that you would expect Wolves to be getting points from anyway. But I think I said at the time, you're missing £60 million worth of talent from that team. Yeah. So if you could spend that money wisely and add it to that team, sprinkle it in with the more quality, better work rate and so on, like you said, Joe, I think you can have a good player. But there were times this year when I watched Matheus and I thought, you are levels above anybody on this football pitch. So I think going back to what you said about Manchester United, I think if him and Bruno can click something together, I think they could drastically improve next year. But that's for Manchester United fans to discuss and talk about, I suppose. Hwang Hee-chan, what a roller coaster of a career he's had at Wolves, Joe. This year has been really, really poor for Hwang, and he seems to be out of favour with Vitor Pereira. I mentioned it on our podcast. There were certain things that happened after the game against Brentford. I think there was a lot of his family or friends, and they were giving out thank you stickers and all sorts of stuff like Hwang, almost as a farewell. I may be reading into that completely wrong, but I think Wolves will be regretting massively rejecting the offers from Marseille last summer now, because it's been a really, really poor season for Hwang.
Yeah, it's been a poor season for him. Not necessarily directly through any fault of his own. I just think he's from a style perspective, the issue with Hwang is he doesn't necessarily fit in to any of those roles in our team as an out-and-out option. Mm-hmm. He's a kind of desperation option in any that he can play probably through the middle. He can play in one of the 10s, but he wouldn't be probably in your top 3 or 4 options for each. Whereas I'm still unsure what his best position is. I still like him in the width of the penalty area because he's dangerous. I think he's still one of the best finishers in our squad. You know, generally when he gets a chance, he puts it away, and there have been moments this year where he's shown that. But from a perspective of market value and what we'd have got last season, I think it was 25 million euros last season from Marseille. We're not going to get anywhere near that.
No.
Just purely off the back of, I think Wolves would be willing to sell him for 10, just to kind of cut the losses almost in a way, because he's not going to fit into Vitor's option. We're going to have a number 10 coming in, you would think, to replace Cunha, which would, without playing wingers, would dramatically reduce the options that we can play him. He's not an inside forward. I do think, personally, if there wasn't a number 9 out there to kind of have as a support option to Strand Larsson, I still think Hwang could be an option for that position, but he's not going to want to sit on the bench permanently, and injuries are an issue as well. So it's sell for me.
Do you think there's scope, Jord, maybe for a loan deal? He's still got a few years left on his deal. We know the player Hwang Hee-chan can be, but just consistency, whether it's injuries or being in and out of the team, is probably his downfall. But obviously Wolves fans will be sick of us saying loan, or they'll just want the money into Riku and bring in other players. But I think a loan could actually benefit Wolves and Hwang, because if he has a successful loan spell next year, the market value could shoot up.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying there when it comes to loan. I think he needs to probably leave the football club this summer, because it's quite clear that he's not in Vitor Pereira's thoughts, really. Yeah. And Goncalo Guedes has been playing over him, and people have been talking about Goncalo Guedes' attitude and application and whether he should be here or not next season. So I think that's sort of telling. I think the big thing for Hwang is, obviously, with it being World Cup year as well, I'm sure South Korea will. I'm not that I'm an expert in the qualifying over in Asia, but I'm pretty sure they'll qualify because they normally do. So he'll be wanting to play football and get minutes and stuff. And I think the only downside, if you're looking at it from a football club perspective, and it shouldn't come into it, but the only downside I see, really, of us getting rid of Hwang next season, as a football club perspective, is that marketability when it comes to the Asian market and the revenue, like we spoke about before on here. Like, I think a lot of the revenue that goes through the museum at Wolves is from South Korean tourists coming over and watching the game and selling those packages. So if Hwang Hee-chan's no longer a Wolves player, that stops pretty quickly, and that's the wrong thing to do in terms of keep a player around just purely on the basis of that. But this is Wolverhampton Wanderers, this is Fosen, strange things have happened, right? So I think who knows? But for Hwang, I think he's, like I say, it's been a rollercoaster career for him at Wolves. I think he's had some real lows, but he's also had some real highs. I think that season under Gary O'Neill, last
top
season,
scorer, wasn't he? I think
he was, yeah. And what, like Joe said, I think if you get him in between the goal, and he's working and acting on instinct, he's a good finisher. It's just, sadly, when he's thinking about it and has a bit too much time on the ball, he appears to be a bit of a limited footballer. So yeah, look, I think I'd be happy with a sell or a loan. I think we probably will loan him on the view to sell him after a good season and hopefully a good World Cup as well.
Yeah. I think 2 goals in the league this season. They were back-to-back games, weren't they? It was the Manchester United goal. I think it was the Spurs game, the following game. He scored from the edge of the box as well. Are you happy with a loan for that one, Joe?
Yeah, I am, to be fair. I think that the only issue is not necessarily an issue, but the only factor that would decide that is how much funds we have coming in. Otherwise, I think the Cunha one has probably been banked already. If we aren't looking to sell an Ait-Nouri or a Joe Gomez, hopefully we're not looking to sell Joe Gomez. Ait-Nouri is looking more likely, but if we need the funds this summer to kind of reinvest them in the team, then I'd rather sell him and use that, and I'd rather keep Ait-Nouri and sell some fringe-ish players, which Hwang would be one. Then we'll probably come on to some others. So yeah, I think a loan works for everybody, and it kind of gives him the option to go and play football. And if he goes as a barnstormer somewhere, then he's he's an option to come back in, isn't he? So I think Hwang's
Yeah.
a confidence player. So if he
For
can get
sure.
that back into his game, then who knows?
Man, let's go loan for Hwang. Sasa Kalajdzic back in full training now. We've never really been able to see the best of Sasha. You know, he came into Wolves, got a nasty injury, was out of favour with Gary O'Neill, although Sasha did win us football matches, scored a couple of winning goals. Joe just come back off another nasty injury. He thinks he's fitter and he's sharper than he ever has been. I suppose he's going to say that. I can't see there being any suitors, so I think at least for 6 months he's probably going to be staying at Wolves, isn't he?
Listen, there's no one who wants him to be successful at Wolves more than us. You know, as a player who's come in and when he's played, for me he's looked good. I think he was on the pitch for the famous Sarabia goal against Tottenham. You know, there's a lot of moments when he's been playing that great goals have been scored. There's that goal at Bournemouth, I think, that Cunha scored.
I think he
I
played,
think it was down at Bournemouth, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure it was. He set him up, didn't he? So
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of his as a footballer. The massive issue is it was an 18 million euro signing, and he's got legs made out of Weetabix. So it's a real shame for him so far. There's no way on earth anyone comes in and pays anything significant to the point where we're going to recoup anything that's even worth recouping. So I think his pre-season will probably kind of dictate what our number 9 recruitment looks like. So if Vitor watches him in the summer and thinks, yeah, tell you what, if he's going to be playing sparing minutes, as in 20 minutes here, 15 minutes there, cup game here, then I think it could work, and I think he'd be a good foil for Strand Larsson in terms of an alternative option. There's a feeling that I have with Sasa Kalajdzic that he thinks he can go and play at the top level, which I think is a great attitude to have. And I think technically as a footballer, the way football is going and the way a lot of teams are moving towards playing, I think if he could stay fit, I think he could be, because he's a good finisher. He's great in the air. He can hold the ball up. He can lay it off. He's limited technically, but a lot of teams are going for that more direct style of play now. For me, there's just something in my head that ultimately says he ends up back in the Bundesliga at a Werder
This summer, do you
Bremen.
think?
No, not necessarily this summer. I think if he can stay relatively fit and get 15, 20 games in this summer and get through the season without any chronic injuries, then I think ultimately he ends up back in Germany.
Yeah.
I've never got the impression really that he's settled or that he looks like a long-term option here. I hope I'm wrong, because I think, like I say, he's an option, but you've got to be thinking when we signed Strand Larsson, he must have been thinking, well, we're of a similar style, but Jorgen Strand Larsson is probably better at all of Sasa Kalajdzic's best elements. That he's just slightly better, and he's got that kind of star touch, I think. So I think it's a keep this summer. I don't want to see him loaned out again, because we send him out on loan, he gets injured, he comes back, and we have to, we look after the rehabilitation side of it. So I'd rather just keep him around, look after him, develop him, be patient with him, and I think we can afford to be Strand Larsson in the team. So yeah, I'd keep him around personally for now.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I mean, his wife has got her own cafe in Wolverhampton. So I think that, in terms of, he's trying to find the personal life side of things, trying to settle down in Wolverhampton, I think. But I think equally, when you're a footballer and you want to play, I agree. I think he's got top level ambitions. But when you're injured all the time, it is frustrating mentally. I can't imagine, how frustrated he must feel there as well. But Jord, I think you probably agree that with a keep, at least for 6 months anyway. I think the only way Wolves would be open to it is loaning him out, and the only way anyone would take him is taking him almost for free. But there's no point in doing that. Wolves may as well just keep him around if that was the case.
Yeah, I'd just keep him. I think I'm pretty sure when he came back from his first injury, he had links with Inter Milan at the time. And a few other big clubs, and you were just well, that's interesting because he barely kicked the ball for us. And I think I agree with Joe, really. Some of the,
I think Fulham as well. I think off the top of my head,
maybe Fulham, yeah. I think Fulham did come in for him as well. I think the bits that I've seen of him in a Wolves shirt, I've been fairly impressed, to be fair. I mean, anyone that's 6'7" always looks a little bit awkward, right? And it's just a size thing, but actually, technically, I think he's solid, and I think he's scored some decent goals for us. I just think there's no resale value there at the moment. I don't think any club's going to touch him after two bad injuries as well, where he's barely kicked a ball for 3 years. And I think he could be a perfect foil for Strand Larsson if we have a bit of patience with him and let him build up a bit of match fitness as and where you can. And I think there's still definitely a player there. I think it's just, can you keep him fit? I think it was a massive risk when we signed him. The one big negative against Sasa Kalajdzic when we signed him was his injury record was horrific, and he's come to Wolves and had 2 horrific injuries. And I think we almost signed him. There's obviously a player there, so I don't want to sound too facetious when I say it, but I think we signed him taking a bit of a gamble because we were a bit desperate at that point to get someone through the door. I don't know. I really want him to work for him. He's a really nice guy, but I definitely should keep him and let's just see what happens.
He's 28 this summer as well.
Yeah, I think if he stays, you got to have him fit for at least 6 months. If you can get him, like I said, pre-season, give him minutes in the Premier League, and he stays fit till January, that's when I think you will review it. If he's been good enough and he's a good option, he's happy to be a rotation option, then sound you keep him. If he wants to play football, you use the example. I don't know if Austria will qualify for the World Cup. I'm sure they will, but there's an option there for him to get into that team. He's going to be wanting to play football. I think that's the reason he went out on loan originally as well. So I think in January is going to be the big one. Has he stayed fit? How has he performed when he's been given the opportunities? And I think Wolves can review that. But either way, this time next year, there'll be a lot more value, I hope, on Sasa Kalajdzic than there is now. So I think there's everyone watching this video probably wants him to succeed and have an opportunity at the club. So we'll wait and see. Pablo Sarabia has been confirmed by the club over the last few days that he will be moving on. Pablo, it was a weird one with me. He was a player that very rarely started, but was given a lot of opportunities under Vitor Pereira. Took his chances at times as well, quite well. He turned around that Ipswich game for us, scored a brilliant winning goal against United, which turned out to be the goal of the season. But based on that, I mean, would you have kept him around? He was one of the highest earners, and I think Wolves are just trying to come away from that a little bit. So if you were given the option, would you have kept Pablo around?
Probably not. And I think we spoke about it on the podcast a little bit. Like I'm a big fan of his, and I think his technical ability is brilliant, and I think he would flourish in a team away from Wolves, even some teams in the Premier League that are more possession-based and on the front foot than what we are, and not trying to play in transition and counter that much because he hasn't got that electric pace to get him up and down the pitch. I think the wages that we believe he was on, close to £100,000 a week, Wolves. If Wolves are paying someone close to $100,000 a week, they've got to be the star man ultimately, and he just wasn't. So I think that comes into it, right? And that's not to say that Pablo Sarabia is not going to move on now and go and have a good move and kick on somewhere else. I think you'll probably likely see him back in Spain. Probably playing. I reckon he'll be probably playing Europa League, Conference League football next season for one of those teams, Celta Vigos or Betis or whoever else, and he'll look good over there. I think for £5 million at a time when we needed him, he hasn't started many games for us, but he's paid us back that £5 million over and over again with some of the goal contributions, and that Tottenham goal still for me is probably, I'm not going to say it's the best, but it's one of the best goals I've seen live from a pure technical perspective. One touch with the right and then left foot volley all in one movement. It's unbelievable. Look, I wish the best for Pablo Sarabia. I think he's a good player. We were probably just the wrong team for him, to be honest, to show the best of him in the Premier League, but we still saw moments where you can tell he's a quality footballer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Spain again is probably where he'll go, unless he does think he hasn't got that long left, and he goes like that's payday. But I mean, we've said it a number of times. The sort of the World Cup element of it as such, it could be a factor, Joe, as well, because I think if he's playing in Spain, these regular minutes, there is an outside chance he could break into that team if he gets.
There's always been a thing with players in Spain where, because of their technical ability, their age is almost not really a factor. If they can take someone to a tournament with the technical ability that he has, his dead ball abilities, and United away this season, then he's always going to be an option. And I think 15 or 16 goal contributions in 2 seasons with limited minutes would put him right towards the top 3 or 4 of in this Premier League era in terms of output, which I think goes kind of missed sometimes with when
He gets a lot of
people.
stick online. He gets a lot, I think, from
Yeah,
Wolves fans.
yeah, he does, and I've said this before. A lot of that is his kind of almost laid back quarterback nature that he likes to play football. I think he likes to have the ball. He's not a sprinter. He's not a runner. He likes to have the ball and use his eyes rather than use sprinting around. Which for me, I love that, and you need to have that in the team. So obviously he's going. I think he screams Betis to me. Watching Betis the other night against Chelsea and seeing some of the, Pablo Fornals, Isco, some of these kind of like ballers from years gone by. I think he slots into that team perfectly. So yeah, I think it's a real shame. I think he's been vastly, vastly underrated for us in the top. Not even just by Wolves fans, kind of in the wider sphere. 'Cause I think when we signed him, there wasn't as much hoo-ha as I think there probably should have been because he's been a world-class footballer.
His numbers at Sporting the year or so before were unbelievable as well.
Yeah, and like he's played for PSG, he's played at World Cups, he's played at European Championships. He's similar to the Matinho signing, I suppose, kind of low fee, high wages, experience, and I hope that's something that we've not had, or that we've always had, and now we've got a gap in the team, especially with Semedo going and the likes. More than likely, I think we've got a gap in that kind of top level experience in the game, and I think that's something that we need to recruit for because that can give you the edge. I think.
Yeah.
So I'm gutted to see him go. To be honest, can't lie.
Goncalo Guedes. This is a difficult one because I think he's obviously in favour with Vitor Pereira. I've never particularly rated him, to be honest. Again, we had a good chat about this on our end of season pod, and Dave Edwards was talking about it and actually thinks he could have a much better season and possibly is one of those inside 10s, Joe. I don't think he's a number 9. I actually think he picks up some nice positions. But he's a player on extremely low on confidence right now. But what's your stance on him going into the new season?
I'm going to commit early on this one. This is 100% keep for me, and this is going to be surprising. I would imagine to a few people, but I made a statement the other day on Twitter that he's off the ball movement. I think Dave Edwards mentioned this on the podcast, and I know he mentioned it on comms on the game. He is light years ahead when it comes to off the ball movement in terms of our team. And I think a lot of that frustration watching him on Sunday, in terms of the way he plays, and he looks kind of permanently pissed off, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That I think comes from that almost I'm making these runs constantly and I'm not getting anything. That's not necessarily how we play, so that's not necessarily a fault of anyone. It's just the fact that he sees a run that maybe a lot of other players don't. In the same way that Sarabia sees a pass that a lot of other people don't. It's similar, I think.
Yeah.
I still think he can offer something, and I think his versatility with confidence, which is really, really key. I think a commitment from the club and Vitor this season to say to him, you're an option for us next season. We could cash in on you, but we don't want to. We think there's a player there. I think that's where they should go. Now, I don't necessarily think that's where they will go. I don't think that's what will happen. I think there's a good chance that he goes, but I just think if we can unlock that extra 10% out of him, I think he's a 10-goal a season Premier League forward. I really do. I think he's got the ability to become that, and he's a typical Wolves player that moves on from us and becomes that somewhere else for me. And he's been that player before. He's been that player during, to a degree, when he's playing. I think when he's had a good run in the team, I think he's looked okay. I don't think he's looked brilliant, but I think a lot of that is his style and his attitude and the way he carries himself, which frustrates people. Frustrates me, if I'm honest. But if he can get in the positions and he can supply his teammates, that he looks like a key member of the squad to me. And when you see him kind of, even when he scored in cups and he scored here and there in the Premier League, it's a big thing for the squad that he's done it because they obviously know he's low on confidence and they're trying to kind of build him up. So for me, I would keep him. I don't think there's enough market value there to sell him personally, and I don't get any benefit from loaning him. So I don't know when his contract's up. You probably know that, Dave. But I personally would keep him.
Yeah, his contract is another year, so it's a big decision really because Wolves have either got to cash in this summer, or
that probably changes things slightly, doesn't it? If he's only got 12 months left, it's either trigger an extension that may or may not be there, or offer him a new deal. Do I think he'd want a new deal from Wolves at this point in his career? Probably not. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at it from almost to an emotional view, because I want to see him be successful for us, given the fee that we paid for him. But I also think part of this is we're selling, not necessarily what we're saying, but you can see the club selling a lot of players and losing a lot of players this summer. I think players like that, where it's a 50-50, we've got to try and keep people just to keep numbers in the squad, because it's just another player we're going to need to replace.
I mean, him getting opportunities, bearing in mind Vitor Pereira pretty much froze him out due to his attitude on the training pitch, and then all of a sudden came in the squad the following week and was starting the last couple of games, obviously due to Strand Larsson being unfit. Does make me think, like, there's two ways you could look at it. Wolves are obviously either playing him to try and increase that market value as much as they can to try and squeeze a bit more out of him, or trying to play him to convince him maybe to add another year onto that contract. In terms of minutes, he played just over 900 minutes. He was getting a goal contribution in the Premier League every 164 minutes, which is just under one every 2 games, which is
6 goal contributions, hasn't he?
Yeah, which really isn't too bad at all.
That surprises me, even having watched him all season. That's more output than I thought. And obviously, he got 3 goals in the EFL Cup as well. So, yeah.
There's something there, Jord. We've just not seen it enough in a Wolves shirt. When we signed him, he was brilliant at Valencia. Like Joe said, there are positive signs, but I mean, what's your stance on him? Because 1 year left on his deal, Wolves are definitely going to be making a huge loss on him. Probably maybe squeeze 10, a massive push 15 million for him, possibly.
I said it on the pod on Tuesday with Dave that we recorded. I'd just get rid of him, and I understand every point that Joe you've raised and yourself, Dave, as well. I think there is elements of a player there and stuff, but I just don't think he wants to be here. And to be quite honest with you, and I think you've got to be all in or all out, and I just don't think he's all in, so I'll just get rid of him. And I think, again, talking about, like, if you look at some of our transfer business from a pure monetary perspective, I do genuinely think pound for pound is one of the worst we've ever made, just because of the money he came in for, the profile of player we were getting at the time. It just hasn't worked, and that, whether that's the club's fault, Guedes' fault, a bit of both. It probably is a bit of both, if I'm honest with you. I would just get rid of him, honestly. And I think I do think he could go. He could possibly go back to Spain, or he could go to his next club or whatever it could be, and go and get goals and stuff. But I just think you've almost just got to let that happen and let that go. Almost similar ilk to what's happened with Fabio this year, who I know probably someone we're going to talk about in a little bit at a time, where you just got to go, you know what, it hasn't worked out at Wolves, thank you, cut your losses. Yeah, we'll take a massive hit on the deal, but yeah, for me, I'd get rid of him, and he'd be one of the first to go, to be honest.
Right, so we need to make a decision on it, because we either sell or...
I'm happy to concede on it if need be. I'm happy to concede. I'll take one for the team.
Yeah, okay, let's say sell on Guedes. I mean, we're going to have to do a lot of purchasing, I think, in the forward line, because at the moment we've kept 2 and one's been crocked for about 3 years. So, Enzo Gonzalez, I think this is possibly a pretty straightforward one, Jord. I mean, he's come back from a long-term injury. We'll probably need to see what he can do in pre-season, but I think he'll probably be loaned out this year if Wolves can.
Yeah, he's a guy who needs to play minutes, and I think he's obviously come off an injury. We've not really seen a lot of him. I wouldn't mind keeping him around the squad, because I think he could benefit from that as well.
Possibly.
I know we mentioned in one of the other early videos around Pedro Lima that, I said sort of, if you loaned him and it didn't work, you can kill him completely from a way of value and confidence and all that sort of stuff. So I do think there's an argument to loan him. He does need football, but I won't be inclined. I'd be inclined to keep him. But he also works at a fire company in Technal as well, so he might not be able to move that far if he wants to hit football anyway. So
did I tell you about that when I was doing a very massive tangent? When I was doing the Otley run, stag do, someone came up to me and said, "Oh my God, it's Enzo Gonzalez." He obviously knew like the joke. I was in the middle of Leeds and someone said that to me. I was like, "Oh my God."
That's a random shout if you're not a Wolves fan.
Yeah, very random. Yeah. Like, it's a bit weird. Yeah. Sorry, George.
Yeah. So I think for me, I would. It might have scared the shit out of me saying that we've sold a lot of players. I'll keep him just purely on that we might need a might need some blokes on the bench for next season at this rate.
Jord, he's only 20. I mean, he barely played any men's first team football for 2 years, because even in the first season he was injured, had a couple of spells in the 21s. I think he got like a cameo appearance on the last game at Molineux for the 23-24 season. But he needs to be playing minutes in some capacity, whether it is 21s football, just to get him back up to speed for 6 months or so. But what would you say on this one?
You said Jord, then you're coming to
yeah, he did say Jord. I'm pretty sure I'll get quiet, because I thought the flow of it meant it's definitely going back over to Joe.
Sorry.
Professionals, Alice.
Yeah, it's live TV. I would do the same. I'd keep him around the team. If there's obviously we simplify this by saying it's still a loan keep, but loan can be a good or a bad, can't it? And if we send him to Zulte Varegem and sit on the bench for 12 months like Nathan Fraser did, then it's a bad loan. If he can go and play in the Championship
for Hull City,
and play 46 games and keep his crew shit together, then it's a great loan. So it's kind of, do you roll the dice on that? I think given the injury that he's had and his age, I don't think that kind of loan would benefit him. I don't think a loan where he's going and playing every game all season is a good move for him. So I think if he can show himself in kind of training, show himself to be fit, I think he's a player to keep around. I think technically, with his technical ability, I think he could have offered more if he was fit this season. I think he would have been an option personally. But I think the injury is a concern. So I'd want to keep him close and keep an eye on him and kind of develop him, get some more Premier League 2 minutes maybe, and kind of build up that fitness. Because my concern with Enzo Gonzalez long term would be is I don't see where he fits into
I was about to ask that question.
The setup. I think, as an out and out winger playing off the right in Paraguay. Not that I watched him every week in Paraguay, but obviously we did some research, didn't we, when we picked him up. So I think he's got to become an inside forward almost to fit into this setup, which I think he could. I'm just not sure he has the pace or the on the ball ability to do it. He can beat a man, but he's not necessarily rapid. He's a good dribbler. I'm not sure where he can really use that skill set in this setup at the moment. So I can't see this transfer ending well at the moment. But that being said, if he can get some game time this season and almost kind of crowbar himself into Vitor's setup, then the sky's the limit, really.
Yeah, I just don't think he's physically ready for the Premier League yet either. Like, he's very, he's not much height to him, and I think in this system you need someone where, if you're gonna have a dribbler, say in Cunha's role, like I say, you need players that are gonna bounce off you, when you're driving forward, a little bit like when Jota used to play as well, But Enzo, I mean, we've not seen a lot of him, but I just can't see that as of yet. So he just needs to.
I think with his size, though, that if you're of that build, you need to be exceptional on the ball. Yeah. And you say, Jota, the ultimate example is Messi, isn't it? Size doesn't matter, but if you're that good on the ball, then size isn't really an issue. But playing against some of these Premier League defenders, do I fancy him running up against Lewis Dunk and Dan Burn? Not really. So
I suppose we saw it with Pedence, didn't we? But his ability on the ball was great, but he had that turn of pace as well.
This is the thing, but Pedence with the ball is probably one of the most exceptional footballers we've had in this phase. It's just a shame he's a bit of a cock. But I think it's 50-50 with Enzo now. This season's going to be key for him, because if we get to this point and we're doing this again next season, he's been injured again, then it's not worth the 10 minutes we've spent talking about him, is it?
Yeah. We'll put him as a keep for now, because I think, again, similar to Sasha, I think the first 6 months could be quite crucial for him. Pre-season could be quite crucial as well. But I think a lot of Wolves fans will be interested to see how both of those players get on. To be fair, we'll probably be able to fire through these last few now, to be honest. Carlos Forbes, Vitor Pereira's already confirmed he's going to be going back to Ajax. Joe, we've just not seen enough of Forbes. I think we were both, and I'm sure, Jord had a bit of intrigue, looking forward to seeing what Carlos Forbes could have been like. Pretty much labelled the Neto replacement, but just got completely pear-shaped, that transfer. Very few opportunities. I think he's only started one Premier League game for us this season, I think I read correctly.
I'm surprised it was one, to be fair.
Yeah, he started the one. I think he's really lost to Brentford quite heavily away off the top of my head. But probably the right decision to be sending him back. It's a shame, because I think the transfer had promise, but two managers have had him, and neither of them have given him an opportunity.
Yeah, from what you see on social media, he seemed like quite an important member of the squad. He was always in the kind of big team photos when we've won a game. He was always around it, and I think the homegrown element, which I think he would have been a contributing factor given his time at Man City. But I think he'll have a good career. To be honest, I just don't think it's worked out this season. I think the combination of Gary O'Neill almost freezing him out, not giving him enough minutes, which I think we can point some blame at Carlos Forbes maybe in a way, but I think Gary O'Neill didn't give him barely any minutes at all. And then Vitor came in, and the system doesn't suit him again. He's an out-and-out winger. He can play off both sides, but he can't play as number 10. So, and he's not going to put the legwork in that you'd get from a Bellegarde or a Manetzi, and he's not got the technical ability of Cunha. So he was never really going to get in the team realistically. I think ultimately, if we'd have gone with a 4-3-3 with wingers, that kind of hybrid setup that we had, then he could have been an option. And I think there are worse wingers playing the Premier League week in, week out than Carlos Forbes. I'm absolutely certain of it. And often play for Southampton. But I think he'll have a good career. Obviously, he's going. He'll probably leave Ajax permanently, I would imagine, or he'll go back there and have a really good season in the league over there. But it was a poor transfer in retrospect, wasn't it? If Gary O'Neill obviously wasn't a fan, why did we sign him?
It probably seemed like a bit of a panic buy, but it's not as if Neto was late on in the transfer window. That was done quite a decent time before that. Yeah. Probably a good job that it was an option to buy though, Jord, as well. So I suppose that we've got that to fall back on, because if it was an obligation, I think everyone would have been kicking themselves.
Yeah, it just hasn't worked. For whatever reason, it hasn't worked. I'm not going to start slating him or the transfer or the move, because I think it made sense on paper at the time. It's just one of those just hasn't worked. And like Joe said, I think it might go back to Ajax and have a good season, but I think Ajax will probably move him on as well. And it's the real crossroads now. He can't have another bad move, I think. So hopefully for him, where he goes next and plays football, first of all, he's playing football and starting the games regularly, and secondly, does himself a credit and a service, basically, so he can maybe get himself back into the Premier League at some point as well, if that's what he wants to do. Yeah,
definitely. Fabio Silva now. Again, this one will divide fans. I think I'm on probably with Fabio. I would love him to succeed at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I would love him to have another chance. But there's been 2 or 3 times now we've said, let's get Fabio back. And then for whatever reason, he doesn't stick around. I think, Jord, this is probably the summer that Wolves need to cash in. Although Las Palmas went down, he had a really, really successful season. Had a lot more eyes on him because he's in a big league over in Spain. Bigger clubs looking at him. I think this is probably where his market value during his time at Wolves is probably going to be towards its highest. So this summer, I think, is probably the right time to cash in.
Yeah, just sell him. Again, something that just hasn't worked. I said it the last year's version of this as well, sell him, because it's just not going to work. And that's not, again, I've got no agenda against Fabio Silva, but I'm glad he's gone to Las Palmas and had a good move, because it's ultimately going to get more money in the bank for Wolves to go out and spend. And I think the biggest credit I can give to Fabio Silva is obviously, again, not that I watch loads of La Liga football, but he's played regularly, he's scored goals, he's got some big named clubs after him, and actually he got nominated as one of the young players of the La Liga, didn't he? Alongside Yamal and Pedri and all these other players. So that's no mean feat, and you can't turn your nose up at that. Whatever you think of Fabio Silva and the deal from a Wolverhampton Wanderers perspective, he's gone away, he's worked his bollocks off, and he's trying to forge a career for himself. And I think there's a good player there. The under-21s Euros is this summer as well. I believe he's captain of that Portugal squad as well. So
the club how is he still getting in that team, by the way?
Because you have to be 21 at the start of the qualifying when the qualifying starts. So I think you can play up to basically it works out you can play in it at 23 if it all falls in the right way.
He's 23 in July as well.
Yeah, so it's like this will be his last time to be able to do that. I think they'll wait for the competition to finish and then cash in, because I think the potential there that the suitors might increase. And if he goes to a club like Atletico Madrid or one of these German teams that are after him, they're not Mickey Mouse clubs. They're all big clubs within their own right. And I think fair play to him is all I'll say. But yeah, I think definitely got to sell him.
Yeah, Joe, it's just, I think it's one of those, good player. I don't think anyone can deny that, but it just hasn't worked for Wolves. And I think just because of him coming as a young lad, there's a bad sort of vibe straight away. I think a lot of people jumped on his back during sort of that COVID season as well. But this is another example, to be fair. A lot of people were frustrated when he was loaned out last year in terms of why are we not just selling him? But this is why the loan market, especially if you've got a few years left on the contract, it will work because they found the right club for him. He's succeeded, and Wall's now going to get a hell of a lot more money for him than there would have been 12 months ago.
Yeah, he's had a brilliant season. 13 contributions. He's a very, very good footballer, and I think people obviously he's almost become a bit of a comedy figure because of the transfer through no fault of his own, to be honest. And I know he had a really bad loan at Rangers, which I think damaged his reputation quite a bit. I think, having watched him a few times there, it was not without blame on him because he was absolutely atrocious for large periods for Rangers. But they played him off the left, and he's not a left winger. He's a. I think again he'll have a very, very good career. He has to leave now purely because that association with that has got to be broken now because it's holding him back. It's holding us back in the fact that it's almost like we don't want to cut the cord because of the negative PR we'll get as a club having signed him for 35 million quid or whatever it was. It's hands down the worst transfer of all time from our perspective in terms of a fee. That's no fault of his, but it was a ridiculous amount of money to pay for a lad that, whilst I think in the end he'll be a top level striker, I think he will. I think it's clear to see, given his skill set, if he can land at the right club, hopefully in Germany where he can kind of build his game, then I think he'll be a top level striker. But he wasn't a £35 million striker when we signed him, and he was never going to be during the length of that contract. So I really do wish him well, to be honest. I think he's, even that season, looking here, the season 2021, 6 goals for Wolves. In a really, really poor team. We were terrible.
His goal contributions per minute was actually really good that season.
Yeah, and I think that was the season he ended up kind of out of the team with William Jose playing and all that kind of stuff.
The first year, wasn't it?
Yeah, and really he should have been playing every week if that was the case. We spent 35 million quid for him. Just say to the lad, you're our option now. Go and do your stuff. We'll support you. But I think as a club, we've let him down massively. There's parts of the fan base included in that. I think parts of the fan base have been absolutely. It's embarrassing the way some of them have treated him, if I'm honest. So I wish him well. I want him to move on more for himself than anything else. I've got no doubt if he stayed with us next season, he'd get games and he'd get goals. But he's got to go. If we can get 15 million for him, I know this time last season that was looking like that was never going to happen. Whereas now, I think it can. I think that's probably his market value now. And I hope it's not a loan again. I don't know what's he got left on his contract.
I think he's probably going into his last year off the top of my head. Maybe got another couple of years on it. Let me quickly.
Yeah, so I think everything's pointing towards having to sell him. Hopefully he can develop elsewhere and become the player.
Last year of his contract. Last year.
Yeah, so that's not going to drag itself out, is it?
No, I think Wolves will want to cover themselves maybe with some sort of small sell on percentage as well, because there is every chance he goes to somewhere. If he goes to Atleti, for argument's sake, massive platform there, does well, grabs a few goals in Champions League, for argument's sake, that value is just going to shoot up as well. So,
100%.
Obviously we wish him well. Matheus Cunha, Joe, I think Vitor's already said that he's a player that wants to keep him around next season, so I assume that's going to be a keep.
Yeah, definitely a keep. I think we've mentioned this before. He'd be that kind of milestone player that can demonstrate to the academy that it's possible to come through the system. He's got minutes in the Premier League already now. He'll get more minutes next season. I think he could probably play through the middle or in one of those 10 positions as well. So, it'd be interesting to see how he develops during pre-season, but he's definitely a keep.
Yeah, Jord, would you agree?
Yeah, keep him for next season. I think he's going to be someone that we're going to see a lot more of next season. Maybe more so from a cameo perspective, but I'm genuinely excited to see what he's about, because I know he was at Rochdale, wasn't he? I think he's not exactly. I know academy graduates few and far between. I don't want to say he's a complete academy graduate, but he came at about 15, didn't he? But
15, 16.
Yeah, he come late on. But look, we've not had anyone like that come through the academy for a since Morgan Gibbs White, I think. So yeah, look, I think it'd be good to get him some minutes, keep him around the squad. Vitor Pereira rates him and likes him, then that's enough of a rubber stamp for me that, let's see what he's about next season.
I think if he's on the fringes of the first team, he needs to probably play a little bit more 21s football as well, because the transition from under 18s to adult men's football was very, very quick. He didn't actually play that much 21s last year. So
he can't just sit on the bench for the senior team. He's got to be playing minutes at some level and dropping in.
I think the 21s he could probably play. It depends what system they play. They try and normally replicate what they're using for the first team. But if in that, he could play probably any of those front three positions, I would say, at 21s level. So I think next year is going to be big for him. Chiquinho, Jord, I think it's probably time to cut ties with him as well, to be honest.
Just get rid of him.
Yeah.
Just I've said it for a few times. I've never thought I just don't think he's very good.
What's your analogy?
Simple as.
I know the one you use every time.
He's like the modern day Jordan Graham.
Yeah.
There you go. He came in when we were at a low ebb. He did a few step overs, and everyone thought he was like, the next big thing. And I just thought he was just a bit of a fad. And he's gone out on these loans, and it's not worked anywhere. I know. He had a bit of a fallout at Stoke when he went there on loan. Was it Nathan Jones? Was it Nathan Jones, the gaffer there, when he had the fallout? And again, look, Nathan Jones is a bit of a polarising person, a bit of a prick, I think would be fair to say. So you can sort of forgive him, Chiquinho, not getting on with him there, but then it's just not worked anywhere else, has it? It's just not been playing, regularly. And look, I think we got him in for a relatively low nominal fee when we got him in. He's never a Premier League player for me, so I think we just cut our losses. And good luck to him, but just there's no value in keeping him around the squad.
George started just one game on loan this season for Mallorca. He's not played a single minute of first team football since the start of Feb. He came off the bench for 1 minute against Atletico Madrid. Since then, he's been on the bench and not come off, pretty much.
So, I don't want to sound smug, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Joe,
I think it was Alex Neil actually. I've just checked it was Alex Neil.
I knew it was someone quite polarising. Yeah, I mean, the prick thing can still stay with Alex Neil, to be fair.
Yeah. Joe, I think even with the lack of minutes, but also he doesn't probably fit into this system either, does he? Last year of his deal, I think Wolves cash in and probably get a couple of million for him.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly straightforward one. Got to echo everything that George said. I think we're going back probably 3 or 4 years where he had 2 or 3 assists in the Premier League. I remember the one for Cody against Chelsea away, I think.
Yeah.
But he's really fell by the wayside the last 2 or 3 years, various loans. It's not worked at Mallorca this season.
Had a nasty injury as well, I think, which has probably held him back quite a lot.
Yeah. You see a lot of players at that age have bad injuries and kind of still manage to get minutes in on a. We're not talking. He's not playing for Barcelona. He's playing for Real Mallorca and Stoke. No offense to any of those clubs, but he's not an option for us, unfortunately.
No. Let's fire through these last few. Then Nathan Fraser, weird campaign for him. Was out on loan to a team which just did not suit him whatsoever. Second half of the season, just completely not being spoke about. I don't know if he's injured. Just nothing from Wolves really. Joe, this is, and it'll probably sort of go hand in hand with the last 3 players that we talk about in a second. But for me, Nathan Fraser, I just don't know. I've never been overly convinced by him to break into Wolves as a first team level. Obviously, he's still a young player, but next season he has to be playing football at some level. But that loan has got to be picked much better than the place where he was last year.
41 minutes he played.
Is that what he played?
In
this
the
year?
second,
full year, that's all he's played.
In the second division in Belgium, in the Challenger League. So was he in the first division or the second division in Belgium? He was
second.
Second. So I think he's not 20 yet, so there's got to be we've got to dampen it.
Just turned 20 a couple of months ago.
It would dampen it a little bit, but I think he's got to get a loan. If it's League Two, it's League Two. Just go and get minutes in men's football, get kicked up in the air for a season, and see you come out the other side reasonably, obviously. he's not a. I do think with the kind of Chirewas and Chiwomis and Frasers who kind of got minutes under Gary O'Neill just out of pure desperation, I think we've kind of damaged them a little bit in the way that they were forced into playing those minutes, and then we almost set an unreasonable bar for them. I think Nathan Fraser is he's got good instincts as a centre forward, but I don't think he's anywhere near the level yet that maybe people thought he was. So he just needs to get minutes at the lower end of the EFL, kind of develop as a man as well as a footballer, and hopefully he can develop it. I don't think the jury's still out. Obviously, there's still a long time to go.
Yeah, they signed a new deal last year, so he's still got a few years left on his deal anyway. So I don't think Wolves would cut their losses just yet. But yeah, when he came back, he played just 121's game, I think, and nothing else has been said. So I don't know what's going on there.
Going on.
Yeah, weird one. Jord, will you be the same? Probably loan out on this one.
Yeah, just loan him out. He's got to play football.
He was on trial on a few football league clubs at the start of last summer to see who wanted to take him out on loan, I think.
Yeah,
and obviously that didn't come to fruition.
I was pretty sure he was going to Shrewsbury at one point, from what I'd got told, and then he ended up in Belgium, which is just again really really strange. And I think he's got like a good profile about him because I'm pretty sure like he's played. He's been in and around sort of England. I'm pretty sure he got called up to a squad, or at least to go and train with
Ireland.
It was Ireland. Sorry, it was sorry.
He rejected the call up a couple of times.
But I'm pretty sure he'd gone to. I'm pretty sure at some point before he committed to Ireland, he'd gone to. Anyway, that might just be a rumor I'd heard about that part of things. But yeah, look, he's got to go and play, and like Joe says, League Two, dare I say, National League. He's just got to go and play football. It's a shame, like Kiddie Harries didn't come up because that might not have been a bad move for him if they were back in the National League themselves fully. He could have gone there maybe, but he's just got to go and play football.
And he's probably fell down the pecking order compared to the likes of Fletcher Holman now as well, who gone out and got minutes, fleeting minutes, but minutes all the same. And obviously he's looking more of an option than Nathan Fraser is at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go on to the last three. I've got Danny Angel, again, played for Spain under-21s in the last 12 months. Fletcher Holman and Leon Chiwomi. I think out of those three, and then you include Nathan Fraser, those four, I think one of them will probably have to stick around at least, just so you've got a front man for the 21s. Obviously, Matheus Cunha could fill that role as well. But Joe, you're probably looking at Chiwomi, Holman, Angel and Fraser, and like the three of the four, you probably want out on loan playing football.
Yeah, I'd want Holman in League One. Really, I'd like to see him test it at that level because I think he could be a good option. I think with Danny Angel, I think he needs minutes in men's football as well. So I don't think he's going to develop. I think he doesn't seem to me to be one of those players who's going to develop in youth football. Now he's probably done what he needs to do at that level to go and get him some minutes. I think he's probably pushing 19, 20 now. I don't know exactly how old he is, but and was Chirewa the other one?
Chiwomi, sorry, yeah.
Chiwomi.
So he's he's still recovering, I think, from a long-term injury, so he may be the one that sticks around, to be fair.
Possibly, yeah. Keep him around. He's in his minutes at youth level, doesn't he? And similar to Enzo Gonzalez, see how he develops. I don't think he's on the level of Enzo Gonzalez. I don't ever see him being a first-team option for Wolves, but he's still young, so who knows?
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of the Sell Down Keep series ahead of the 25-26 season. Lads, thank you very much for jumping on and joining me as always. If you enjoyed these series, guys, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It should be out as a podcast as well, so you're listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating. And stay tuned over the summer for loads more content all about Wolves, obviously the transfers, and looking forward to pre-season as well. Look after yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next one.